watching plays and scores retold. In this podcast the game unfolds. Every try and tackle shared. Legends of the field, none compared. Echoes of cheers, the crowd gets loud. In this audio space, we feel so proud. Pass the word, let the speakers blast. Rugby tales from the present and past. Through the airwaves, our spirits cast. In this rugby love, forever vast.
Speaking of the past weekend's rugby, luckily for me, I got three out of three with the South African teams. Um, but I want to discuss the Stormers game first because that's a game I've watched. I didn't really watch the Bulls game because I thought it was going to be an easier game for them against Edinburgh. But apparently, what I hear from the people that watched the game is Edinburgh brought the fight to them. And
They did. They did.
the Munster and the Sharks game, I think we will do that at the end because there's a lot of controversy there with Jaden Hendricks and Crowley. That's something juicy to speak about. But coming to the Stormers, a couple of minutes, or I think it was an hour before the game, I put on Baina's group. I said, just watch this couple of guys. And I mentioned that prop of theirs, that Bati, Henku Venter, obviously Dodge, Kyle Stein, Dwight Pelotu, and Rowe. I think that was the names I mentioned. And frankly, I wanted to be wrong with that. Because those guys, Henku Venter, yes, he dismantled the Stormers. Rory Dodge, all the names I mentioned just went through the Stormers game plan like it was a high school team. Now I'm not a coach and I'm nowhere near a coach. But even for me as a guy that usually sees the games and not every game they play, but can see, listen, watch out for these guys because they're game changers. And they didn't limit those guys. They gave them the space that they wanted, and they played their game and with no disruptions on them.
Yeah, that was a thing that I picked up. I mean, look, to be fair, I think, what was it, 4 or 5 minutes in when the Stormers scored, I thought to myself, I'm not convinced, but if they play their cards right here, they could win. But that yellow card Snutler got was expensive for them, and that's where you could see, even by halftime, I would have expected some changes to be made in terms of tactics, because as you say, Neil, it's like the guys who were dangerous for Glasgow was still given the space to run. I honestly, with some of those runs, I just thought to myself, this is how we got beaten, however much it was, or was it 47-7 or whatever they beat us with in the season. It was like, right, like where you have guys who can run like that, if you allow them the gaps to do that, they will carve you up, and that's pretty much what Glasgow did. And the problem is, I don't think the Stormers did enough to counter that. Respect to the Stormers for trying to do their own thing, but the execution of their own plan as well could have been better.
Yeah, I also think if it wasn't for Sasha, the score could have even been worse for the Stormers. It makes a big difference when he's there. But also, and Niels talked about Henku Venter. What's interesting about him, I see that he can't be playing for Glasgow because of the Scottish that's now got a I think, a cap on their foreign players. So it looks
Yes.
like he's going to France now. And, the guy's
Mhm.
33 years old. And it's pity he didn't come back to South Africa, because even without
Yeah.
the guy that we could have used, So,
Mm.
but yeah, I also think on the one side with this cap that the Scottish have got on their players, on their foreign players now, it will also help with the South African players, not going overseas. I also
Mm.
think a lot of things that will help is the fact that the World Cup is going to start. What's it? I think in 2027. I think, or 28.
Mm.
That's going to make be a big changer, within the local teams also, and the guys staying in South Africa. I hope.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I saw a thing where someone was like, yeah, actually, yeah, it was Rian Oberholzer from Saru was like, oh yeah, maybe now the SA teams will take Champions Cup seriously, with the announcement of the club. And, unfortunately that didn't sit very well with me because I was like, well, guys, I think Saru needs to try do more in helping clubs retain top talent because this Club World Cup it could be quite something, but at the moment the South African teams really battle in terms of balancing URC and Champions Cup or even Challenge Cup. And then also you have the Curry Cup to be played. Like, one friend of mine keeps saying, and he's got a point. In an ideal scenario, South Africa would have enough money to make it so we could do a 12-team Curry Cup, or even if you keep it to 8 teams or whatever. But have it where we have our Curry Cup, and then we play Challenge or Champions Cup. To sort of be like, we're not in URC. It's literally just like England's doing. England and France have their domestic leagues. And with enough money, South Africa could do that with the Curry Cup, where, you're then sure of a few things. One of which is you're then able to have a Springbok play for the Griquas, or for Boerland, or for this team, or, but also you're sure that you're better equipped to retain talent because people will be like, oh, actually, you know what? I can, if I'm playing for this team, or whichever team I'm playing for, we're making a push so we can play Champions Cup as well.
Are you
Yeah.
guys speaking of that new R360?
No. That's the Rebel League that you're talking about, Neil. That they want to.
Yeah, that one is
Oh,
upsetting. That one is upsetting. Did you guys see they're going to double the salaries? It's like a rugby IPL. Because you're not
And
going to play for
Live
your
Golf.
area.
Yeah.
And it's going to be traveling like Grand Prix. You're going to play even nations that's not rugby nations.
And interesting, the guys that's sitting behind it is the same guys that started the IPL, and also the same guys that started the Live Golf. With the Rebel Tour there, with the tournament. Sorry. So it's quite interesting, but it's going to change the game, and it just. How many players do you really have? Do we really have the depth? Well, like, do they really have the depth to play, let's say, U rugby and then this Rebel League rugby? I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be a game changer, I think.
But I see England is quite against it, and Ireland, because they're saying for England is going to be a lot of players leaving the Premiership Cups for that salary. So we can the usual tournaments for this new, and they're talking about starting 2026. That's next year.
Yeah, why they will complain is because they've got ownership. Those guys, it's rich people owning those clubs. And then what will happen to them? Do you still invest in a team like that? mean, a team like Leinster, like it's a giant, and not even to talk about the French teams. It's mega money that we're talking about. Their budgets are huge. So this comes to light. I don't know, but I must say it's going to be quite interesting. But also another thing I just wanted to add on the European Championships. Why we're not performing? It's because we don't have all the Springboks available to us.
Yes.
Now, how many guys of South African players, like the French, the Irish, they have all their players playing within their unions and in the country. That's why they can perform, in a European Championships. We can't. I mean, if you check it, all our guys that are in Japan, England, and France, and those places, if we just had all our guys from foreign-based players, South African, that's foreign-based, and bringing them back, you can have like 20, 30 top players, that's back in the unions, back in the 4 unions. So each union can get like 5 or 6 top players back, and that will be a difference then.
Well, exactly. And I think we've said it before, even with the Lions, where it's like, where we would be with the talent that we have, and then if we had Marks, Quacker, and Mostert, and Faf, like just those 4. Bring those 4 back, and we have the talent we currently have. That's a massive boost. Definitely. That honestly would be something.
But that's what I have against this R360. Did you guys see that the time frames they want to do it in? It's June, July, and August, September. That's in the international rugby time. That's the June internationals. That's the August internationals. So, will you get a player then rather play for their country or get a double salary and play in this rugby IPL?
You're going to find players making themselves unavailable.
Yes. So that would weaken international rugby as well. Well, how do you guys think about it? That's my seeing. I think that's going to weaken international tests.
Yeah, I think it will.
Yeah, just like the cricket. I mean, if you check how many guys just want to play, just in cricket now with 100 classes, that's only opted for T20 cricket now. I mean, at the age of 33, he's retiring from international cricket, and this is exactly what's going to happen. So, rugby, your lifespan is a bit less than cricket. So, at the age of 26, 27, the guys are going to retire from international rugby and just play these rebel leagues or whatever the case may be.
And then another thing is most people complain about there's already enough rugby. To fit one more tournament in will be stretching everything out.
Yeah.
Now there's rumors, not confirmed, but there's rumors they want to think of getting the half shorter, like a 20 or 25 minute per half.
Nah.
Surely that's not going to work. Because then what does it mean you have a bench then? It's going to be there's not going to be impact of your bench at all.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well then just say, look, you know what? Let's grow rugby 10s and make do rugby 10s and have those tournaments be in those windows, because really, if you're going to shorten halves like that, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it reminds me of is like when sometimes we do warm-up games, we'll do 4 chuckers instead of doing 2 halves. And it feels like that. Whereas, you might as well say, like, okay, hey, listen, if you do that, you have a squad of 30, and you can literally just change all 15 for the second half, and see what happens. Because I'm not really a fan of those suggestions.
Heaven forbid that comes to Test rugby. Because we all know in Test rugby, the first 15 to 20 minutes, the guys feel each other out. They're not showing their cards. They're just, absorbing everything and see what's going on. So now if you have a 20-minute half, that's your first half gone already. The guys feeling themselves out, and your first half is gone. So you have only a second half. That would be dumb. Then rugby will lose all credibility then.
Exactly.
Okay, so the Bulls game. Any of you guys? Ek weet nie. Het jy die Bulls game gekyk? Ek weet jy lyk ook nie die bulle kykie.
Nee. Ek het ook nie gekyk nie. That's just my scenario. If it's not a big game, I don't watch the Bulls. Obviously, this weekend I'll watch because it's a local derby, so then I'll probably watch the Bulls. But no, I didn't watch the game. I just followed here and there, on my app, what the scores were. But yeah, I also didn't watch it.
Yeah, I managed to catch it. Yeah, look, I will say I felt like the Bulls could have taken more control of the game. But also, there was a lot of the usual Northern Hemisphere tactic of we have a man down. He needs attention. Break and play. Oh, we have a man down. Yeah, we have a man down. And the ref was quite lenient with that. And it really had a lot of sort of stoppages that helped them. But yeah, you could see once the Bulls got control, much as Edinburgh were fighting back, and I think it's something the Bulls really need to work on is they're agile. Usually in the last 10 to 15 minutes of a game, they tend to become a bit lax or a bit fragile. And look, thankfully, this game wasn't a tight game for them, but the worry for them is that in a semi-final or final, you can't have those dips. You really, really cannot have those dips. Also, early on, there were a few missed kicks, and I remember, messaging a friend of mine who's a Bulls fan, just saying, my worry here is that it'll come down to missed kicks. But thankfully, then the Bulls started to score tries, and then they were like, okay, now we're playing rugby.
Who kicked for Bulls? Was it Chamberlain?
No, Keegan Johannes.
Oh, Johannes. Okay.
Yeah. And I was telling that same friend, it's weird because, Keegan Johannes then also, I think, went and scored a try and, really did some very, very good things despite those early missed kicks. And I just thought, you know what? This is supposed to be Butter Chamberlain. Butter Chamberlain, unfortunately, has put himself in a really not good position in terms of the Bulls because it should be a no-brainer that, if Goosen's not there, you have Butter Chamberlain. But I don't want to out and out say he lacks BMT, but he's showing signs of a player who lacks BMT. And so I'm not sure if he's injured or not, but if he's healthy, still, you're probably not picking him for a game like this because you're like, you know what? You can rather gamble with David Creel taking some of the kicks. And I think David Creel actually took one kick and it also missed. You can rather go for an option like that than, than to have Butter Chamberlain on. And then he's just not performing the way he can perform.
Yeah, so maybe they're bargaining on Pollard coming back next season. then it will be thought.
Because here's the thing. To my knowledge, Goosen's staying as well. So now, when you have the luxury of being able to say, oh, you know what, we can stop Pollard and bench Goosen, or vice versa. And now, Keegan Johannes is showing, he can do good business for them at 10. You have him. That is actually immense. And where as well you can have Ville Leroux start and then maybe sub on Goosen at 15 or vice versa. They're putting themselves in a spot where they've got actually some really good depth.
Do you guys think Ville will continue with the Bulls for next season? Or maybe just go the roundabout and end his career at the Cheetahs? Do you think he will play 2 or 3 seasons more for the Bulls? Maybe retire from international rugby, but still play for the Bulls? Or maybe make that move back to the Cheetahs?
Yeah, I think he gets his 100th Bok cap and then retires from international this year. But I think he'll probably stay with the Bulls. Look, you know what? The dream for me would be for him to go back to the Griquas. Go back to where it all started, and that's him riding off into the sunset, saying like, "Hey, you know what? You first heard the name when I was playing for the team. Let me go back there, because you can imagine, just having him around, what that can do for the players there. That's what I'd love to see, but I think he'll likely retire at the Bulls.
Yeah, very signed for next season for the Bulls again. I don't know how long he will stay there because he's also got housing in Valdevie, in the Cape. So I don't know how long. Yeah, again, but yeah, he signed for another year. If not mistaken, it's either a year or 2 years that he's actually signed for. Which for me, I mean, he's really getting old. But yeah, I agree with you. He's just going to do that 100 test and then probably from international rugby. Just another thing before I forget, did you guys see this elite URC 15 players? And what would you say about the Bulls? I see the Bulls have got 3 guys in there. Sharks have only got 1, and the Stormers have 1. What is quite interesting is, because of their 4 attacks, so they've got Walker Low in there, and Vessels, and they've got Hanekom in there. So those 3 guys are really going to make a difference on Saturday against the Sharks. Yes. I remember the previous game with the Sharks and the Bulls. Although the Sharks won, that Gerard Steenkamp, he was pushing that. What's his name? Vincent Koch. He scrummed him. He didn't have any answer to flipping that scrummage of Gerard Steenkamp. But I think if the Bulls are going to take on the Sharks on Saturday, they're definitely going to do it in the scrums.
Yes.
I'm definitely going to watch that game because it's going to be Springbok backs against each other, basically. It's going to be hard. I think the one that gets the upper hand in the scrums might pull it through. But how do you guys feel about? Do you think the Sharks played their final already?
I was thinking about that because, 1, they played the later game. Then 2, they played a game that went to not only extra time, but to kicks. So I'm thinking there's a lot of tired and sore bodies that now have to go to altitude. In fairness, I think, they do have a lot of Springboks in there. So these are guys who will know how to counter the altitude end to end. But I would say they might very well have played their final already. Because can they replicate what they did? But also, and mind you, I will say I haven't, I didn't watch the game. But my question is this: considering Munster has not been their usual self, this is not the Munster who won URC 2 seasons ago. For this to be decided on kicks, I start to wonder, are the Sharks up to it? Because the question also becomes, say they win, are they up to a final? If I'm honest, so far I'm not convinced. Also, I will state for the record, just because of how many players they keep raiding from us, I also really just don't want them in a final. I definitely don't want them to win URC because, it feels like more of a bought team than the Bulls. Yes, the Bulls have bought players, but with the Bulls, a lot of it is we're getting guys back from overseas. We're bringing in, guys who are close to retirement, or even where it's like, hey, here are guys who are not on the Bok radar, but we can get them there, rather than the Sharks being like, oh, we're going to take Edwin van der Merwe because he's a Bok and, we want more Boks. I mean, we're going to take, Vincent and Emmanuel and Jordan and this guy and this guy and this guy just because we have the money to do it.
Moya, just come and live in Pretoria. Just move to Pretoria, and you'll see you'll never want to flip and be a Bull supporter or support them at all in your life. They are the worst supporters. They are in your face, and most of my friends are flipping Bull supporters. But when it comes to rugby, I'm telling you, these guys are next level. Really, this Pretoria, just they different breed, when it comes to rugby.
I'm
actually sitting on both sides. In one way, I can agree. Yes, they kind of played their final, but I think it's going to be more of a sense they're going to play their final this weekend. And will they be able to do it again? Because if by somehow gets the upper hand on Leinster, then it's going to be in South Africa. Say they beat the Bulls, it's going to be a South African soil final. But to do it 3 times, to go with the Munster game, put the Bulls away a weekend after that, and then travel to Leinster and do it there.
Yeah.
That's going to be too difficult. I can't see them doing that.
The thing is, you can imagine if they do, though, they will be
massive.
Documentary after documentary after documentary. Even though, apologies, I'm going to be that person again. But even though, if they do it, it kind of makes sense because even against Munster, in their 23, they had 13 people who have Bok caps. Most of who are current Boks. Because, it's one thing if you're like, we've got people who've got Bok caps, but, they had them 5 years ago or, that type of thing. Or, like, they had 1 cap and that was it. Like, no. They have people who are core to the Bok cause.
And it's like 1 or 2 caps. It's a couple of caps. It's not one guy doesn't have 2 or 3 caps. It's like 50, 60 caps.
Exactly. So,
Sorry, Brian?
Go.
Whoever wins this weekend between the Sharks or the Bulls, my money, and it's not what my heart says, it's my money will be on Leinster to take the cup. Why I'm saying that is they just too hungry at this stage because of the European Championships. And I think all the other times when they choked in a final, I think they're not going to choke in this final round. I think, and this is a second option for them, the URC. They obviously want to win the European Championship. That's their ultimate goal. Because obviously it's more status, more money. But I say Leinster is going to take it this year. It's sad to say, but definitely my money will be on Leinster. So whoever wins this weekend, good luck to taking on Leinster there. Okay, Leinster also still has to win this week, obviously.
And I think that's actually it. Leinster have never made a final, since the inception of URC as URC. Yeah. So, I think they've got the most to prove, but you get that feeling of if they make a final, they're winning that final. There's no way they're not winning the final if they make it. But, it's unfortunately, it's that parallel with Ireland. You get that feeling of, hey, the day Ireland makes it, to a semi or a final, that's it. They're definitely winning, but it's just getting to those hurdles.
The thing I saw this weekend was a guy just after the Leinster game with Scarlet. There was a guy. He's a Leinster supporter, clearly with his jersey on, and he mentioned something, and I have to agree with that. He said the depth are uncanny of them. The talent they have is exceptional. But one thing Leinster lacks is they don't go for the jugular. They play with teams. When they can put them away in the first half, they don't do that. Like with Scarlet was in the game. For a couple of many minutes, they were in the game, which you would expect Leinster to bury them within 20 minutes. So why does that happen? Because if you look back in the Champions Cup, everything, when it needs to count, and that's an Ireland problem, that's not only a Leinster problem. It's like they can go for the jugular, but they don't. It's like they think there's an time, they slow things down, they collect it, when they could just outrun and outplay any team at any given day, but they don't do that. Why are they holding back? Why are they holding back?
Well, I don't know. I think sometimes it's maybe a thing of taking it for granted, and I think URC one showed us that because you look at what they pulled, where it was like, oh, we're playing the Bulls and we're at home. Okay, you know what? We'll have Johnny Sexton on the bench. Yeah, we'll have this other guy on the bench. No, it's fine. Even the fans were kind of like, man, I don't need to go to this game. I'll save it. I'll save it for the next one. And there wasn't a next one. And that I think is a thing where, in some ways, they maybe at this point, like some complacency has crept in, where they feel like, yeah. And look, you can understand how it would creep in when you have a season where you've had to do just enough, sometimes not even just enough, to get by. Why would you feel differently going into the playoffs? And if I'm honest, I think that's a big thing for the Sharks as well. If the Sharks turn it up to a point where they're like, hey, listen, we are now, fully switched on, then they can win URC. But if they go in with the mentality that they seemingly have had the whole season, where you see the guys who are Box especially kind of doing the thing where they're like, look, we're going in knowing we're going to win this. Yeah, look, no, okay, we're a bit down. It doesn't matter if we're a few points down. It doesn't matter. We'll just do enough to get the win, Or, we need a bonus point. Okay, well, we'll just do enough to secure the bonus point. And you can see it. It's a weird sort of, like, guys who have heavy work rates and that, you get that feeling that they're holding back a bit because they're like, you know what, I can't be full Springbok this person. I can give you maybe 2/3. Maybe 2/3 is fine, but I'm not going to go all the way, to my capabilities. And I think that's where they're having problems.
The other years, we saw them gamble with the Champions Cup, and many of the times you are sending their second stringers to the South Africa, not worrying about low points and stuff, and then the shock comes of championship and they lose out, and then again they don't send their best. Now this year we see them sending their best, and like I say, I expected them to bury Scarlets within the first 20-25 minutes and to take the game totally away from them, which didn't happen. If you have guys like George van der Vliet and you have Doris and you have all your big names, surely you must bury this team. Because Scarlets, yes, up for Scarlets, they had a massive season. Don't take
Yeah, I mean, and they beat Scarlets. Leinster in the season.
Yes. So don't take away anything from Scarlets and say that they're a Mickey Mouse team this season. But still, you have your number one choices. And you're making it look difficult for yourself. So is it not maybe a question that they underestimated Scarlets? Or like you said, Moya, they just did the things to get the job done?
I'm thinking... Yeah, I'm thinking so. And another thing that pops into my head, because someone mentioned that when Leinster lost in the Champions Cup, where it was like, this is part of the problem with having your actual, like, full-on first team, right? Like, if you have, if you're like, hey, these are the guys who, if we had our way, we would start every game. They only play a handful of games together. There's always rotations in that, to keep all these guys fresh. And then it's like, oh, okay, here's a game where we'll bring all guns blazing. But you won't always have the cohesion you should with that, And I think that might also be part of what trips them up.
Well, Scott, definitely. That's the surprise of the season.
Yes.
And then also check now next season with Connacht that who did they make the coach now? Lancaster.
Yes, Stuart Lancaster.
Yeah, that's going to be the coach now. So those guys are really investing in the flipping good coaches now. So let me hope I also do also get another coach to invest in a coach this year at least. Well, for next season.
Speaking about that, the sponsor, the new big sponsor. I saw something on a group. A lady said that it's probably still going to be Fidelity. That's not a youth sponsor. Where's the talk about the youth sponsor we're going to get?
I think it was like Fidelity is going to stay on as one of the sponsors, but it won't be the title sponsor. Because because many things I've heard is Chery, that Chinese vehicle manufacturer. They are apparently the front runners, and in some ways it makes sense that they would offer a good deal. If I'm honest, I was wondering if it was going to be Qatar Airways, in part because Emirates are now the flight sponsor for Champions Cup and Challenge Cup. So, now for Qatar to be like, oh, hey, you know what? Let's sponsor a team and make sure our airline is visible, hopefully all the way into playoffs of Challenge Cup for now, and then the long-term plan is, hey, we need a team with our sponsorship in Champions Cup, where it's like, yeah, sure, Emirates can fly you guys and everything, but they're flying you with your Qatar Airways kit, and also like when you're playing the games and everything, Qatar is nicely displayed.
I also heard that it's going to be Cherry. Well, it might be Cherry. And if you see how Cherry is growing at the moment, it's huge. There's also rumors that they might be taking over the Roslyn plant where Nissan is, because Nissan
really?
Suffering with the Chinese brands. So it looks like they are looking at actually taking that whole plant, because Nissan has been in the country for how many years, and they've got that huge plant in Roslyn. And another thing is, what I also heard is that Ellis Park might still stay Ellis Park, and it's not going to be the sponsor's name. Because
it will be Cherry Park.
Cherry Park, yeah. I don't know how that's going to go. I think there is a Cherry Park somewhere. Is it at the soccer stadium?
I'm not sure, but it sounds. I'm honestly picturing like a park with cherry trees. I'm not thinking rugby stadium.
Luckily, we're in South Africa, guys. We're not worried about Trump's taxes. Otherwise, that could be an influence.
It could be a thing, but I'm thinking about that as well. Because with the sponsorship and the talk of coaches, someone made a very good point. About how now's the time for us to look at Mzwakhe Nkosi, who has coached our juniors and Currie Cup team. And, I'm looking, I'm like, actually, you know what? He knows all the young players who've come through our system. He knows them.
He knows their Lions DNA, yeah, definitely.
Exactly. And also we saw in the Currie Cup, he managed to develop a spine through the team where it's like, okay, much as, we can rotate it, here's the spine of the team. So, and also he's gotten those teams to playoffs and finals and, and won some as well. So I think definitely worth a look. But, the counter argument is actually we need someone who's got experience at, the highest levels. And then, for me, the question became, if we have money, are we able to, for example, have, Heineke Meyer is apparently available. Can he be a director of rugby so that we don't have a person who's both CEO and director of rugby? Can we have it where we have Heineke Meyer or Ackerman, someone, as DOR, and then you have Nkosi as coach? And really, because if we get it where there's someone who's like, cool, I will coach the coaches, I will do this, but here, now we have these coaches at these levels getting the things done. I think we could be onto something.
But it's the same people, Moya, that says not to give Nkosi a chance. It's the same people that wants Jimmy Stonehouse to coach the Lions. And that doesn't
Thank
make
you.
sense to me. Nkosi's
Thank you.
been there for a while, had great results. Stonehouse has been there for 20 years. And what is accolade actually? Curry Cup. He
Yeah,
once,
Curry Cup and SA Cup.
yes, he once led the Springbok B team, I think,
Yes.
against Canada or somebody.
Mhm.
That's the only international coach experience he has. So why
Yeah.
not take this guy that's been with the Lions for so many years,
Mhm.
um, and developed with the change up, and not give him a chance? What do we have to lose? I
Exactly.
mean, look at Ivan's record. You can't do worse than that, I think.
Yeah, and this has been a big thing for me because people keep talking out of both sides of their mouth with that, because they'll say like, "Oh no, in course he's not ready. Yeah, we need a proven coach who's got experience at the high level. Yeah, why don't we get Jimmy Stonehouse? Because Jimmy Stonehouse has won a Curry Cup, but it's like he's won the Curry Cup in times where teams did not prioritize the Curry Cup. He's won it, which is
Yeah.
not that difficult to do when literally SA Cup could be a 4-team competition, because we knew from the start that, like, in fairness, Bullant or the Griffins were where it was like, which is it going to be? But smart money said Bullant, who now are in the Curry Cup, thanks to making the top 4. So you have a 4-team competition that you've won. Okay, yes, you won it undefeated, but again, there are only 3 teams that were a proper challenge to you in that competition. And it's not to say Jimmy Stonehouse is a bad coach. I think he's done very well considering the resources as well. But a big part of me also wants to say, considering Mzwaka Nkosi has worked also with the coaches, right? He's worked with the coaches, he's worked with the players. This is someone I feel you can give the keys to, especially where you can be like, hey, now you have access to all the URC players. Make things happen. And again, if you're worried about him being new, that, well, you can bring in a director of rugby who will be like, yeah, you know what, I'm here in a sense to coach the coaches, but it's their game plans, it's they can make that happen.
Oh, Stonehouse is a good coach, but a Curry Cup coach.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. He's a good coach. He's a Curry Cup coach. Not to say he can't do internationals or URC or that a couple of years ago, Super Rugby, but he chose to only stay at Curry Cup level. And
And he
his
also
age now
signed.
to switch,
Mm.
that's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and O'Neill's he also signed with the Pumas now. I think till 2028 he's got businesses
There we go.
in Nelspruit. So the guys must stop with Stonehouse. He's not going to leave there, and he said after that he's going to retire.
Actually, it hurts me to say this, but Heineken Meyer won't be a bad proposition to think of. This guy he's been a Springbok coach. He won Super Rugby. How many players developed after
Yeah.
in his era for the next Springbok coaches? So he develops players. He knows his rugby. He's hungry to. He's back in South Africa. He's hungry to coach a South African team again, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And he expressed that.
as much as it hurts me to say to take an ex-Bull coach, why not? Give him a shot.
Yeah.
Give him a shot.
Well, and one other thing that I think counts in his favor. Who was his attack coach when he was Bok coach?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Ricardo Loubser.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's not like he'll be coming in being like, I've never worked with any of you, and I don't know what's going on in this, and I have to get acclimatized. He has someone he's worked with before in there, which I think is a big help.
And just to spice things up, how do you guys feel about maybe okay, we don't have the money for it, but say we had the money. Would you guys should we do another experiment with a New Zealand coach like John Mitchell? Do you think that will be a new element? Because I think this Northern Hemisphere rugby, if you get somebody in from the Southern Hemisphere, like you take a ex, say for instance Scott Robertson, say he's nowhere near all Black internationals, he's not nowhere near any New Zealand rugby, and he comes to the Lions. The fresh perspective he will bring, maybe that could be something good, or it can cause
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that before. What's his name? Gatland got signed by. Is it Uruguay? I think Uruguay or somewhere have signed Gatland, and I was thinking about that, and I'm like, you know what? Sure, he had a terrible run now with Wales, but could you get someone like that in who, like, say we had the money to, could we get? I mean, hell, could we get Eddie Jones? What version of Eddie Jones would we get? Would it be an Eddie Jones who can really bring the best out of the whole team? Would it be an Eddie Jones where we're like, oh yeah, I don't, we really just shouldn't have looked there? I don't know.
We can perhaps afford Rory Duncan.
Well, I mean, he's now CEO at the Cheetahs now.
Yeah, we can steal him. We can steal him.
No, exactly. But this is the thing, I think in some ways, I prefer knowing things than not knowing things. So now it's a very nervy time because, like, who's it going to be in that? But at the same time, I honestly rate again. There's if we cast the net widely, we can get in people, like all sorts of people, really. But if we look inward, I think we might be in a good place as well. But then one thought that has been on my mind for the longest time, and I wish, I could have a window into like the alternate universe where we made the different choice. I honestly wonder what would have happened had we selected JP for as our head coach instead of Swayze when Johanna Ackerman left, because those were the two front runners, and we went with attack rather than defense.
Yeah. Look, but Swayze didn't do a bad job. The thing where Swayze gave me alert signs was that game we played in Hamilton against the Chiefs, where he didn't even win there, and that's where these things came to light, where he has stress and this and that. Purely, if you're stressed, you're not stressed today. You've been stressed for a couple of weeks or a couple of months.
Yeah.
Rather, before the season began, why not speak up and say, listen, I think I can't handle this. You don't drop your team midway in a season like that. That's a problem. That's the only thing I can say bad about Swayze. But I love Swayze. From his request days, Swayze is a great man. He's a great personality, and he knows his rugby. But
very much so. Very much so.
Unfortunately, that's what cost us. If he didn't leave us with that Chiefs game, I think the final would have been different. The build up to the final would have been different.
Yeah. Look, Swayze has been struggling with his mental health issues for a long time, and that's why I also said that he'd rather do super sport, and now he's coaching the women boxing, and he's actually doing very well there with the women there. But obviously, it's not in the limelight like men's rugby at the moment. So he'd rather like that. I agree with you guys. Bringing a few experts in, even if you just use the guys on a consultancy basis, especially with Swayze, he's a brilliant analyst.
Mm,
And you actually know that Jake White is also actually not a coach; he's also an analyst. And those are the type of guys that can analyze a game. That can watch the previous games and see where the strengths of the other team and the weaknesses of another team. That's where Swayze the brain. I like it when he talks because he's very emotional about it and passionate about rugby, and he knows his stuff. Another guy that obviously knows his rugby very, very well is Nick Mallett. But obviously Nick Mallett said he won't be coaching any team. But also a brilliant rugby brain in South Africa.
And that's the thing for Ivan. People get cross with me when I say this. Ivan analyzes the game great, but the problem is he can't coach it. He has all the plans, but to execute the coaching, I think that's where Ivan lacks. He has the plans, but he can't execute them and coach players to his plan.
He's a too good guy. He's a very good guy, and that's what the problem is. You can't have a guy, when he started coaching, he was at the same age as many of the players, and you can't have. You must be a senior guy. You must have that authority. And one thing I must say about Stonehouse, he's got authority with the guys, especially because obviously the culture is different where he's coaching at the Pumas, but they've got a lot of respect for Stonehouse. He doesn't take nonsense. If you're late for a meeting or so forth, he chases the guys away. Nobody's above the game, and I think that's where the Lions are lacking. And it's not just the problem with Cash; it's also a problem with Rudolph's Charlie. If those guys are not going to put their foot down and be a bit stronger, be a bit more forward, and be more in the media. And again, I'm not a Jake White supporter, but check how many times Jake White is in the media, how he's talking to the media, even if it's win or lose. And he's obviously he's a bad loser. But our guys just disappear from when we lose on a losing streak. We just disappear. Look at the beginning of the season when the URC is going to start. You're going to check whoever our coach is going to be. Well, if it's still going to be Cash, you'll see him speaking. You'll see Charlie speaking. But as it progresses, they just disappear.
And Jake White, the coach, has got 2 red cards overturned in 2 weeks. We just sit back and say, well, that happened.
Yeah.
No appeal, nothing. But we're going to go a bit over the time, guys. I see it's 1 minute left, but I still have to say 2 things. What a shocker is it that John Ray Rudolph going to the Bulls? I mean, a lot of people have been wanting that guy, and he just stuck to the Cheetahs and stuck, and now all of a sudden going Curry Cup for the Bulls.
Yeah, I'm really surprised he did that. I will say this, he's one of those guys who, I mean, he's a liability in terms of cards. He really is. But that said, he's also a damn good player. So I think he can do some good business for them. However, I am also sitting there wondering, is he going to be a Curry Cup player for them alone? Or is he going to, is it one of the we'll start you in Curry Cup, but you're going to feature in URC, you're going to feature in Champions Cup. Because that's the thing, is like, if you're playing for a team that's in Champions Cup, you want to feature in Champions Cup. If you're not, that kind of says look, you're here to supplement rather than to feature.
I can't see anybody changing Hanekom out of the game for John Ray Rudolph in a URC. Yeah. The referees are much stricter there, and it's going to be cards all over. And that's the thing, he's not a bad player, it's just his intensity. He's like Skalkberger was, junior. He just plays the game rough, like Willie Engelbrecht a couple of seasons ago at the Stormers. They're just too intense, and that's why they give penalties away. It's not on purpose, but it's in their style of cleaning and in their style of going for the ball.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. if they can rein that in, where we keep the intensity, but all your hits are low, your jackling is proper, all that, then I mean, they've got a massive asset on their hands, particularly like going to URC and Champions Cup.
Yeah. And then the elephant in the room, guys. We have to speak about the Sharks game. Do you guys feel it was not sportsmanlike from Jaden Hendricks?
Yes.
Did he really get a cramp?
Yes.
To me, I think it was kind of, he went for Crowley with the first kick. He wanted to disturb him. I mean, even the ref told him, listen, back off. And then to fall down, the way he fell down was a bit fake for me. I was looking at a soccer game. Because you can't walk normally and then suddenly you fall down and then you wink at the guy. That's like, you see, I'm outwitting you now. Luckily, it didn't cost Crowley the kicks, but still, why do we, South African teams or the Springboks, we always get connected to this wacky type of finding a loophole in the game type of thing to get the results?
Did it work? I think it worked. They also showed pictures, you could see his calf was really flipping, going into like a spasm there. You could really see it. But winking at the guy, that was arrogant, definitely. So I think he did have a cramp, but I didn't think, he had to lie down there. They could have just rolled over a bit further. But he was yeah, but I don't.
And that's why I said yes to both, because I think a lot of the media outlets and that are trying to make it seem like, and even with the responses that people are making, like in the media, it's like it's one or the other. It's like, no, he could have legitimately crammed. Was what he did nonsense? Absolutely, it was as well. So those two things can be true at the same time. And look, Sia was saying like, gamesmanship is a thing. Like, teams are always, like, players are always chirping each other. They're this, we're here to play rugby. So, like, in some ways, I understand him kind of dismissing it, like, hey, look, we're focused on the next game. Let's put it behind us, especially because, it's more of a media storm than one would have expected. However, I will say this, and it's something that always sticks with me. If the shoe was on the other foot, so imagine now Munster had done that and Munster had won. The way South Africans would be going on about it. But now everyone's like, the Irish choked, and that's why they're so bitter. And they're this, like, hey, it's very easy to say when it's not your team.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting, the referee for Saturday is Brace, from Ireland.
Yes.
So now, what happened now? So it's going to be in the back of his head. They will always, argue that it won't be like that, but it's going to be in the back of his head. And I think he's going to penalise Jaden. So if I was Jaden on Saturday, if I was Plumtree, I will just say to Jaden, just ease on Saturday. Stop talking to the ref, because he's renowned for doing that. But I think he's the marked man for Saturday, my honest opinion.
Exactly.
So he can also count against the jobs for the game.
Yeah, and if I'm the ref, the first thing I'm doing is letting captains know, listen, I'm talking to you guys, no one else. I don't need, and for the Sharks, this is the problem that they have. Bongi will be in the ref's face. Jaden will be in the ref's face. Mapimpi sometimes will also be in the ref. They have a captain, yes, but everyone else who's not captain but is senior will also be trying to talk to the ref. The ref needs to very early on say, listen, someone who's not, and literally you can tell that to Sia, you can tell that to, who's the Bulls captain at the moment? Is it Ron O'Keefe or is it Marcel Coetzee?
Marcel Coetzee.
Yeah, I think it's good.
So literally, call them and let them know, like, hey, listen, if someone who's not you approaches me, just know, don't care what's going on, instant penalty. Let the teams know that that's not going to fly, where, now it's turning into football where, you constantly have people who aren't the captain in your face as the referee, and that, like, nope. don't let it influence the game.
You know what? That's what I'm looking forward to. I'm a huge S2EP27 supporter. And there's one guy, Jasper's brother, Kobus Visa. I cannot stand that guy. But he's the same personality as what, S2EP27 has. So I want to check these two locks going at each other on Saturday. I can't flip and wait to see what they say.
Yeah.
Yeah. My last 2 cents on that is, Jaden got a cramp, but he could have walked off. And like I said, the wink just made it worse. And
Exactly.
I hope we can get past that, because he's been haunting us. If you go with the World Cup, that kick from Ramos, where Colby chased, that's going to be debatable for many of years. The All Black try that was a try that wasn't awarded, that's going to be a debate forever. And now all these little things come up again. So we getting the tag of what used to be New Zealand. We getting that tag now of we'll do anything just to get the win.
Yeah.
And that's sad for me. I don't like us having that tag on us, because I saw a video and they showed the top tacklers were Munster guys. The guys that play the hardest were Munster guys.
Yep.
So they showed a clip and with Jaden winking, and then with the whole team with Scannell and everybody standing there, dirty trunks and everything, and said, "Listen, this is what rugby stands for." And then showed the clip of Jaden and said, "This is not what rugby stands for."
Yeah.
So now we're in a place again, like South African teams get labeled, and the Springboks get labeled as somebody that's witty and will do anything by any means to just get the win.
Yeah. And that's not great. You really don't want that tag. I mean, it was like, the way South African, like the Boks and South African teams were, constantly getting carded in that. You can't go back to those sorts of days. And also, I think the thing is, you want to be respected, and in some ways as well, like you want people to kind of say like, hey, we need to be like the Boks. You don't want people to say, you know what, like they're winning. But why are they winning? Well, they're winning because they'll try whatever underhanded things they can do. It's, like with Ireland and their croc rolls. You look at things like that and it's like, hey, this is why, even as a neutral, like if I was a neutral, I would probably be like, not actually feeling Ireland, considering like people seem to get lower limb injuries when they play Ireland. And it's like, how is it a pattern? For Boks, you don't want that as well, where, you can have neutral sitting being like, I don't think I'm going to support the Boks, because, like, it's always something with them, and it's always something where they're trying to get under the opponent's skin in, like, really, like, dastardly ways where it's just, it's contrary to the spirit of the game. You don't want that.
Yeah, and it's been happening and been happening and been happening. I mean, it started with Russia being the water boy. Then it was that flyover of the plane while the Haka playing Argentina. There's so many that we can mention now. So I won't get cross with any other international team that says, listen, you guys, you're not sportsmanship, you're bending the rules to get the win. And there's truth to that fact. There is truth to that fact. It's becoming like that. And I hope something changed and we just go back to, you know what, play the ball and get the result in an honest way.
The main thing.
Yes, if you don't get the result, at least you walk off with your pride.
Yeah.
Because if you give your pride away to just get a result, actually you lost. Yeah, you got the W, but you lost everybody's respect.
What bothers me about Saturday's game is it's going to be shoving and flipping, pushing, and I think there's going to be a lot of time wasted. It's not going to be an entertaining game because there's a lot of egos involved in Saturday. And the Irish and the European refs have a tendency of, blowing the guys, especially at the rucks. You're going to see, and that's where the guys are going to get a lot of turnovers, is with this referee on Saturday also. So it's going to be penalty after penalty. The one who has the least penalties on Saturday will win. And I know what Neil also said. I also agree in a way with the scrums. But let's say the scrums and the penalties will be the decider on Saturday, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
And I think on that side, the Sharks will be better off because they have the better kicker. Enjoy.
Well, better kicker and also kicker who's got more range.
Yes.
So now it's at least 60 meters Jordan can slot it. So, I think that's where the Bulls have got to really play their most disciplined game, for this because, Jordan has that ability to pick them off, provided he's got his kicking boots on.
Yes. Obviously.
And on the Shark side, they have the wingers to chase the ball. So if they play territory and just keep the Bulls in their own half, even if a penalty, they're going to go sideline because they don't have anybody to give a 55-meter penalty. So if I were the Sharks, I would just pin them down in their own half and just keep them there. Play the territory. In
there. Yeah. Well, that said, it is coming up to 1:15, so I'm going to need to dash. But question, predictions.
I'm going to go. It's going to be sorry to say this, but I'm going to go with the Bulls. And Leinster.
Bulls make the final. Oh, sorry, Glasgow Bulls.
Are you hoping to get a South African final there, Moya? Is that why you're saying the Glasgow?
Yeah. And also because I think, Franco Smith is managing to get the best of his team again. They dipped a little bit close to the end there, close to the end of the season. But I think they showed a pretty solid performance in their quarters. So, yeah, I'm thinking, they'll just manage to edge Leinster, and then the Bulls will hopefully make altitude count, and then Loftus final.
Leinster Sharks. I think the Sharks have the Bulls number. They flip and their nemesis. I think the last 5 games, I think they showed that the Sharks won 3 out of the 5. Yeah. And the Sharks actually play better away from the Shark Tank, and they've got a good track record.
Cleaner water.
Yeah. They've got a good track record at Loftus, so I'll go with the Sharks just. But again, it's the penalties can be the decider, and I still think this Jaden Hendricks episode might count against the Sharks. So, but I'll still go with the Sharks.
Okay, guys, let's wrap this up. And just one last thing to think about. Just imagine we get Heineken Meyer, and next year it's going to be a semi-final between the Lions and the Bulls, and it's Jake White versus Heineken Meyer for bragging rights. Oh, that would be in it.
That'll actually be quite beautiful.
Perfect.
Guys, enjoy your night. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. You too. Yeah.
Yes, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.